So back on October 11th, back on the day that City Council declared bankruptcy, I was in the room covering that City Council meeting when Harrisburg declared bankruptcy. And you really need to understand the scope of what was happening here. Harrisburg was falling at an incredible rate financially. They were no longer paying their bills. They were no longer paying their debtors. They were no longer paying their workers. They slashed a massive amount of government jobs. The police, the firemen, nobody knew where their next paycheck was going to come from. The city had to try all different types of ways, selling tax liens, taking money owed to it early, just to get enough money to pay its workers. And at this point, it wasn't paying any of its debt. Its general obligation debt, which is like the mortgage of a city that they use to buy fire trucks, police cars, it wasn't paying that debt. It wasn't paying anything. And Wall Street was really concerned because Wall Street had hundreds of millions of dollars in debt that Stephen Reed took out, tied up in this city. Wall Street wanted its money. Wall Street didn't care if police got cut and the crime rate spiked. Wall Street didn't care if firemen got laid off and they couldn't fight fires as well. Wall Street didn't care if taxes went up on the impoverished people of Harrisburg. They didn't care if parking got more expensive. They didn't care if trash collections got more expensive. They didn't care what happened to the people of Harrisburg. They wanted their hundreds of millions of dollars. And on that day, October 11th, 2011, Harrisburg City Council said no. You Wall Street, you were just as responsible as Stephen Reed was, or City Council was back then, for all that money that was loaned to the city. You signed those papers too. Why are we the only ones that need to be held responsible now? So they filed for bankruptcy. All of a sudden, the media, the global media, converges onto Harrisburg. Everybody was here. It makes national news. Al Jazeera is asking the question, is this the end of American capitalism? Because you have a capital city that has now filed for bankruptcy. Again, the first one ever. That's how significant of a moment this was. And Wall Street was worried. Wall Street didn't want this to happen. Let's say Harrisburg goes bankrupt. Let's say Harrisburg reorganizes its debt. And Wall Street doesn't get a lot of its money back. What's that going to encourage other cities around America to do? They're going to look at that example, and they're going to say, Harrisburg reorganized its debt. Harrisburg didn't have to pay all that money back. Why should we? Wall Street was worried. The legislature stopped the bankruptcy. The legislature, that gets a lot of campaign funds from Wall Street, said, you know what? I don't think we're going to allow this to happen. They threw out the bankruptcy. Judge threw it out as well. But the significance of what City Council tried to do, and just look at this from the perspective of Harrisburg City Council, there's 7 members. They're part-time public servants. They wouldn't call themselves politicians. They would call themselves public servants. They make $20,000 a year. They don't have staffs. Many of them don't have college degrees. They're grandparents. They're people that have lived in the city their entire lives. They're people that just love Harrisburg. And they were willing to wage a war against multi-billion-dollar banks, and they didn't have enough money to buy the bullets. But they were willing to take that on because they saw that there should be shared pain here. It's not just the responsibility of the Harrisburg taxpayer when these cities go bankrupt. It's the responsibility of everybody involved who was willing to make those loans, give that money to the city. And Harrisburg City Council went right after them. It was a remarkable moment.